Let's talk about the politics here now. So we got the story from the Courier-Journal. Senator Rand Paul claims vindication fundraises off of new Anthony Fauci emails. Rand Paul questioned Fauci and said, what did he ask him? Like, do you support the gain? Do you still support?
He said, were you conducting gain of function research? That was the main question.
I thought he said, like, do you still support?
And do you support? Right.
And then Fauci is like, Senator, that is incorrect.
Entirely and completely.
Completely incorrect. No gain of function research was done. That's not true.
Well, and that whole interchange is amazing because if you go back and watch it, he denies that it ever took place. He denies any of this funding in Wuhan. So Rand Paul pushes him a little bit more on it, and then he starts defending why they funded experiments in Wuhan.
So
in the same exchange.
To be fair, I think it's self-evident that he was lying, and I wonder if when Daszak, the EcoHealth Alliance guy, is talking to him on the phone or whatever the communications they were having outside of email, he's like, "This is really bad that our research may have caused this. We need to get in control of this." So Fauci goes on TV and dispels the myth, they say.
Right, and you look at how early, right? You look at how early those emails are. You look at how early that conversation is.
Was it February or March?
This is like the very start, and we're told, dismiss, not a thing, don't worry about it. Washington Post is running headlines, debunk, debunk, debunk. Why is debunk? Because Fauci said so.
So I'll say, because I take the more hyperbolic stance of saying it proves Fauci lied, these emails. Because in my opinion, I think Fauci's playing semantics. Yes. I think he's playing semantics to try and get around the fact that he lied to Rand Paul. That under oath. Many people are saying it was perjury. And when he dismissed gain of function research, even though the people he sent the article to were like, oh yeah, it looks engineered. So he's lying. I think on top of this, Fauci was probably sweating bullets. You hear news about this COVID thing, and he's probably going like, who did we fund? And then he calls EcoHealth Alliance and he's like, what did you guys do? You've
got to find that email from his assistant then, because that's what they say, that do we have some link, some distant link, that's the phraseology they use, distant link to this work abroad. So it's like they do everything they can to not use the word Wuhan or Wuhan Institute of Virology.
Work abroad.
But it seems like they know that there's an issue going on here. And by the way, this whole thing, I should mention this, right? Talking about emails and FOIA. This is why Hillary had set up that server, right?
Yep.
Because she knew that FOIA will get you if you're a little loosey-goosey with that stuff. And apparently that's what was going on here.
In my opinion, that email shows it. Fauci was probably, pulling his collar going like, oh man, if this was one of our programs, and how many people died? Millions? Was it like 3-something million?
3.5.
3.5 million.
Oh yeah.
And that's because he funded this research. Now, they're not going to blame him directly because he provided funding to an organization who provided funding to a Wuhan lab, but it's still, he's in that chain.
This is the, the classic Michael Crichton, phraseology of it where, you only focused, I'm going to butcher the line, but you only focused on what you could do and you never thought about whether or not you should.
Right.
Yeah. So Fauci, and he has that op-ed now that's coming out, I think it's from 2012, where he was asked about the dangers.
Oh yeah, they pulled it out, right.
The dangers of gain of function research. And what did he say? He said, even if it does escape the lab and cause some
it's worth the risk.
It's worth the risk.
It's worth the risk. And so this is what gets me back to my initial statement though. My thesis is, where are these emails? And it's possible that this was on a different, those were, maybe that was classified, maybe that was done on a higher server because of communication. There's all sorts of reasons that something would be classified, right? And then it wouldn't show up in FOIA. I was never NIH, so I don't know whether or not they operate under a classified system, but I understand that if, obviously if something was at the secret level or TS level, it's not going to be coming out in FOIA. That being said, he easily could have come out and said, yeah, we were looking into this. And oh, by the way, here are the top 10 things we found in Wuhan that are similar to this. This is just like that study that, Shizhong Li, the Batwoman, and she came up with this study from a year ago. That's these spike proteins. That's exactly what we looked at. And here's this plan on the shelf. See, the idea behind all of this, or at least sort of the raison d'etre, was that there would be an on-the-shelf plan or game plan for, okay, this is the one that's crossed over to the human population. This is the coronavirus that made it. It was this variant. So we've studied it. We have an understanding of how it works. These are the best things to use against it, right? That was the entire point. Where is that work? Where is any of that?
After a decade, what were they doing? What did they ultimately develop? And it seems to be a whole lot of nothing.
And it comes up in ventilators, and remember the ventilators are the big thing, and then do masks work? Do they not work? He tells someone they don't work, then he comes out saying that, well, we should anyway because of, the percentages in terms of the population. And so you're looking at this going, well, wait, just based on what you're saying, the whole point of funding Wuhan, the 2012 op-ed, was that we would have some, early warning system in place. Where was it?
I pulled up the article. So it was a 2011 article, I believe. The New York Post reports Fauci once argued for risky viral experiments, even if they can lead to a pandemic. And now the article from Washington Post, it's actually, you search for Google and it pops up because so many people are clicking on it. But I want to make one point I've made a couple times in the past couple of weeks. Initially, Fauci said, don't wear masks. And he does this interview on 60 Minutes, came out in March, and he was like, masks are for people who are infected to stop them from infecting others. Right now, people should not be wearing masks. It might stop a droplet, but, you shouldn't be walking around. And then in the email that everyone's sharing, it's from February, he says basically the same thing to someone who asked for advice. Here's the problem with this. Fauci comes out in July and says, I said that because we knew our medical professionals needed the PPE because they're the ones who have to deal with sick people. But Fauci said masks don't protect you from sick people. So why would the medical professionals need it? They're not going to get the sick person sick, and it's not going to prevent them from getting sick. But medical professionals still need them, I guess, in general. Okay, fine, that's fair. But if people...
It's like, why does the x-ray technician stand behind the thing? Because they're the ones there all day.
Right. So you have doctors with the masks because they're treating the sick people. Did Fauci not consider that if people wore masks, they wouldn't spread the virus, and then the doctors wouldn't need as many masks because they wouldn't be working long hours with sick people? You see the problem here is either Fauci's a real moron because he doesn't understand cause and effect. We'll tell everybody not to wear masks because he says on 60 Minutes, the mask will stop an infected person from infecting others. Then he tells everyone, don't wear the masks because the doctors need them to treat you when you get sick because no one was wearing masks.
Meanwhile, the spread is continuing throughout the population, which means that a higher percentage of doctors, of course, is going to need them. So it is this sort of interesting thing where you get into, and Thomas Sowell writes about this, where there are certain people who it seems that when they think about problems, they take out that human element, right? That element of human nature, that element of like this. You could get into a whole like liberal conservative kind of thing about this, where look, I would love to live in this world where it's utopia and everybody shares things, but human nature is real and you can't get away from that.
And this genius is why Fauci commands like $430,000 a year from the federal government.
He gets paid more than the president.
I was going to say more than the president.
Yeah,
that's
certainly more than the last president.
Incredible. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Trump was giving away a salary, but the president gets $400,000.
I actually made more than the last president.
There you go.
Like everyone made more than the last president.
Yeah, because he was getting. What was he giving himself $1?
I think he legally had to like do $1.
He would donate
or something,
it, or whatever,
and then he would still donate that $1.
Yeah. So for all of this genius, Fauci gets all that money. So I saw you tweet. You said that they're actively planning an exit for the guy.
Yeah. So I got a message late last night, and of course I was up watching Batman cartoons.
Of course.
Which Batman cartoon?
Actually, Batman versus Robin. So I'm getting into like the old the standalone movie series that came out. I guess from like the 2015 era. And
now that I've built the suspense up, let's go back to Fauci.
I know, right? Yeah. So it was Batman v Robin was actually really good. I like totally got sucked in. I hadn't watched it, and then it was on my Plex, so I was like, oh, check this out. And it's like real. And my kid didn't like it because it's like much more adult. Like,
everyone's on the edge of their seats right now, going, just tell us what happened.
What's going on? Going super viral. So, but basically they said, look, because the emails came out from BuzzFeed, right? They can't put it in that sort of bucket of, oh, that's conservative media, right? It came out from BuzzFeed, then Washington Post apparently had a similar FOIA, so they came out as well. And so it had to be something that they responded to. And one of the first things, now, obviously they're talking about multiple angles on this, but they're saying, you know what? Maybe since this thing is winding down, we can look at a potential exit strategy.
He's got a book
for the good doctor. Does he have a book, though?
Does he?
Because, so we saw that Fauci, essentially this announcement came out about a Fauci book, But then I went on Amazon later this afternoon, and the listing was gone, totally gone. Well, people were saying, is he profiting from the pandemic? This seems unseemly. They were making comparisons to Andrew Cuomo. So so it's like, it's like woke, downplay the virus. Broke, downplay the virus. Woke, fund Wuhan. Bespoke, put the actual infected patients in the nursing homes. Yes. So that's Cuomo. He's even next level. So. I don't know if it's that. I don't know. It could also be a legal thing, right? He's still a federal employee, but it does definitely seem like there's something going on, and that his tenure may be coming to an early close.
Did you see how BuzzFeed framed the emails? How Fauci was trying to keep things together at a time of chaos.
My favorite is CNN.
Yes,
it's a complete hagiography. We're not going to discuss anything that's actually in the emails, but. The fact that he was able to respond to so many emails while he was so busy. There he is, Dr. Fauci, exhausted, late into the night, responding to email after email.
Honesty.
Just
Rare
a wonderful, wonderful
honesty.
Man for this frank honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, why didn't they frame it like the New York Post did? Like, early emails suggest Fauci knew the potential for lab leak. COVID was being engineered.
Because it feels like CNN is sort of the last legacy media outlet that is really on this sort of Fauci train. That not only it's because it's like this is a government employee, right? He's a bureaucrat. He's a leader. We should be skeptical of all government employees and government officials. Mm-hmm. But we don't need to hold them up as some sort of paragon of wisdom and the Oracle at Delphi or something like this. He's a government guy. So, but CNN is still on that train. They're still trying to sell the Fauci merch. They're still trying to do all this, and even BuzzFeed is turned.
I'm thinking to myself, why would they publish any emails at all? Because many of them make them look bad, and then try and frame the story as a positive. Not to mention the implications of Mark Zuckerberg.
So Zuckerberg's emails are interesting, and and this is kind of. From a lot of the Peter Daszak stuff was actually kind of out there already. So me looking at it was like, well, we kind of knew this, but it is nice to have that confirmation because it becomes one of those things in sort of the journalistic game of, it's not what you know, but it's what you can prove in court. So the fact that you have the emails now where they are discussing gain of function, huge, monumental, right? And just in terms of newsworthiness, but in terms of the overall story, it just kind of fills in those gaps that we basically all suspected to begin with. But the Zuckerberg stuff is super interesting to me because when you look at the whole situation of not just Zuckerberg and Fauci, right? But you look at Zuckerberg from his perch throughout 2020, right? And so there he is talking to Fauci in the beginning of 2020. Hey, how can we help? How can we? And I do think he probably meant that from coming from a good place. I do want, he does want to help, So he goes to Fauci, and Fauci's telling him, oh, we need the social distancing, and then eventually it becomes the lockdowns, and Facebook is pushing those. And then later on, when the lockdowns are coming, say, oh, we're locked down. How are we going to have an election? And who is it that comes in? And so many people have reported on this, that it's these foundations that are then set up and funded by Zuckerberg Chan to help with the election in many of these cities and many of these typically trending blue areas. Also Zuckerberg. And it's kind of one of those things where you really look back and we say, do we as a society want any one person, right? William Randolph Hearst is a great example, and one unelected person to have that level of influence in our country?
No. Especially with Hearst, it's pretty obvious what he did to marijuana and his tree paper mill industry. I don't know if you're much familiar with Hearst, but he was a paper magnate and owned all these newspapers. Decided he didn't like the competition of people growing hemp and making parchment out of hemp. So he started printing all this propaganda about why hemp was so dangerous and driving people insane, and used his propaganda paper to. And
Zuckerberg is doing the modern version of this, where you go on Facebook and you say, these opinions aren't allowed, these opinions are. And then you hire thousands of people. And
to bring it full circle, what were those opinions a year ago?
You couldn't talk about lab leak.
You couldn't talk about lab leak.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, there's still a bunch of stuff you can't say. I don't even know if I'm sitting here waiting YouTube will eventually ban us. I guess Steven Crowder was talking about CDC numbers, and YouTube gave him a strike. I
hadn't heard that, really.
Yeah, Steven Crowder's been off YouTube for 2 weeks because they were talking about CDC guidelines. Yep. No. I think that was the first one.
Okay.
They had a warning before. He got a strike. Then he got a warning. Then he got a strike over the CDC. And then the second strike, I think, was because they were saying that the police were justified in the shooting of Ma'Khia Bryant. And YouTube was like, you were celebrating it. So then they get taken off. But the first strike, when he mentioned that he was talking about CDC guidelines, and he said some specifics. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he was basically just saying, like, here's what the CDC says, here's what we think. YouTube gave him a strike for it.
Right, and so to your point, this is the problem, right? This is the problem with allowing these social media platforms to be arbiters of truth, because they become arbiters of discussion. And at the same time, going back to the FOIAs, now that we see the Fauci leaks, now that we see the emails in there, he's having the exact same discussions internally that people were trying to have on social media. Zero Hedge, of course, was sort of the canary in the coal mine of this, because they're the one of the very first places that was publicly talking about the Wuhan lab. They were zapped, permabanned on Twitter for this. Now, they were reinstated, but when that first came out, that sent people don't talk about the repercussions. Say, oh, that was just Zero Hedge. No. What were the repercussions of that? What was the secondary and tertiary effects? Everyone was basically told, the message was sent, this topic is verboten. You are not speaking about this. This is like talking, this week is the Tiananmen Square anniversary of the massacre, June 4th. So it's like talking about Tiananmen Square in China, right? If this is done, you will be disappeared. That's the message it sent to everybody.
That's the freakiest thing about cancel culture, is not only is it top-down authoritarian, you're banned, but it's that people become afraid of even mentioning it. So it's like the grassroots effect of cancel, just like canceling yourself before you even begin.
Well, if you talk to people who are from the Soviet Union, my wife is from the Soviet Union, she was born there, you realize that because you don't know where the rules are, you don't know where the fault lines are, you don't know where the ideological landmines are, am I supposed to like this person or hate this person, that kind of stuff. The only way to really be safe is to not have opinions. Right, is to not question anything, not have opinions on things. It's to shut down in a very internalized way. So the overall, the final end state of cancel culture is that you're canceling your own mind. You're canceling your own opinions. You're canceling your individuality, and it's internal. The censor is actually in. You don't need the Ministry of Truth, because that's just in your head every day.
That really disturbs me, because then they're removing themselves. It doesn't have to be the government. It doesn't have to be Facebook. It doesn't have to be Twitter.
I'm not saying Tanya. By the way, I'm not saying Tanya's like that.
Right?
Believe me, she's been in America long enough. She makes her opinions known, and she speaks her mind quite often.
Remember that photo from it was the Soviet Union, and there's like Stalin. He's on a boat. And there's a guy next to him. Yeah. But then all of a sudden, there's another photo, and there's no guy next to him. What was that called? Do they have a name for that, or a word for what they were doing with history?
I mean, so airbrushing, is
back in the day.
You call it, yeah, airbrushing. But
what do they call it airbrushing back then?
One thing, it reminds me of something I heard from a North Korean defector once, who was talking about this situation, and he said, and it's not as nice as the way Solzhenitsyn would put it, but the defector said, look, we know that they're lying about the United States. We know that they're lying about the Western world. We know that you're not just killing each other all the time, and it's like race war and racial strife constantly. We know it's not like that, right? And this chaotic situation. But the problem is, because of the censorship, we don't know what the truth is. Yeah. So we don't know what it actually is like. So because we have nothing to verify it on, we have nothing to compare it to.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.